live webcast, our first, to try to bring a program not only to the 1,630 of our leaders, an extraordinary turnout this week, a record-setting turnout this week, to be able to bring education and training, skills, the resources and tools that all of you need to do the difficult work we talked about last night. But I want to welcome for this very first time our ability and our opportunity to bring a program across the entire IAFF. So I welcome all of you who are joining us live this morning. I also want to thank our panelists, Dr. Suzy Gulliver, that will be with us this morning, and President of Local 27, Kenneth Stuart from Seattle, Joe Schulle, President from Philadelphia, Local 22, and Frank Leto, who's a captain, New York City, FDNY, Local 854, and Director of their counseling services. You'll be hearing from this panel, and I'm going to turn it over to my assistant here in a moment, Pat Morrison, on a subject that we're spending more and more time, effort to focus on, to try to develop services and programs around to address an ever-growing problem within our own ranks. We know that post-traumatic stress disorder is a terrible condition that affects all parts of our population. I'm told that it affects somewhere between 6 and 8% of the general population. But we also know that in our business, our profession, our ranks, unfortunately our members, firefighters, paramedics, are experiencing it at more than double the rate, somewhere at 18 to 20%. It's a situation where oftentimes it's hidden from us. And oftentimes we don't quite maybe fully understand. We're in a business, you're in a business, it's as I say, it's a tough racket. You respond to incredible events, many of them obviously very tragic. Some that can bring a lot of stress. I look at so many of the incidents. I was talking to Joe last night, and he was talking about a house fire where they lost a family, and the members couldn't find them because they virtually had melted into the mattresses in their bedrooms. You see a lot. You experience a lot. And it creates a lot of pain. And we've got to find better ways to deal with it. We're losing too many of our own. We talk about disability. And the fact is that beyond disabling our members at times, they unfortunately reach a point where they feel so desperate that the only answer they believe is to take their own life. We're experiencing extraordinarily increasing rates of suicide of our own. Just in the past 10 weeks, we've had 13 in Canada who've committed suicide. 4 of those deaths since the first of the year, and the most recent one in Toronto, Local 88 just last week. We're experiencing them in recent weeks in Philadelphia, New York, but all across our IAFF. And we need to do a better job at knowing how to recognize it and learning some of the skill sets and tools that can help us address it. This workshop will hopefully not only enlighten, but will give us some of those tools to be able to take home and implement to make the lives better for our members. So I welcome you. We've got a full room here. I'm certain we have a full room out there across the internet, and we are looking forward to bringing this program and others in the future so that more and more of the 3,400 affiliates that we have across 2 great countries, thousands of leaders who, like all of you here, who have committed your obligation and taken your oath to try to make things just a little better for our members, to be able to bring these programs and tools to more and more of you. So with that, I wish you a successful and productive workshop, and I'm going to turn it over to my assistant for our Health and Safety Division, Pat Morrison. Pat.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that opening. We have with us today, we have, I think, an extremely talented panel here that will really go over not only the science, they'll go over some of the programs, and they'll really talk about some of those individual programs there. As the General President said, I am assistant for him for health and safety. Underneath health and safety is the behavioral health side of the equation. I can tell you every day we get calls about departments that not only have had a suicide, that they've had other problems in the behavioral health arena. And we know that we have to address this. We know we have to get the programs out there. We know that we need to make sure that the departments realize that this is an issue. This is an issue that we hear all too often. We know there's still a stigma that firefighters feel that if I say that I need help in the mental health, that they're going to work against me. Somebody's going to work against me. We know there's trust and confidentiality, and we know that we have to build the programs, and that's what we are doing today. The General President has put a lot of resources into this, and he is committed to do this. So I think we'll have a panel discussion on this, and what we will try to do is at the end of the 4 panelists, we will go ahead and do Q&As after that to make sure that we have any of your questions out there. Hopefully we can answer them. So to begin with, right after our first panel presenter is Dr. Suzy Gulliver. Suzy has a long-standing interest in traumatic exposure, PTSD, addiction, high-risk occupations. A clinical psychologist since 1990, she has been funded by NIH, VA, and FEMA to study stress response, treatment development, and treatment outcome for veterans, civilians, and firefighters. She has completed multiple projects nationally and internationally with the fire service. She is most proud of serving as the clinician for the Boston Fire's critical incident team, which included service to Hurricane Katrina, and more recently as a clinician on the ground in West Texas Fire, and as a consultant to the IAFF for Boston in the weeks following the Boston bombing. Suzy has been a strong supporter. She has worked with the International on many, many projects and will continue to work on what we're hoping for is our next national peer program that we're going to be putting out. Please welcome Dr. Gulliver.
Well, thank you, Pat, for that introduction. It's always an honor to be asked to speak to this audience in whatever capacity. So what I want to talk with you about today is why post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic stress disorder matter or should matter to leadership, and what, from the evidence base and the research base, you all can do about it. I have to do my acknowledgments and disclaimers. My research has been funded over time by the Department of Veterans Affairs, National Institute of Mental Health, NIAAA, NIDA, and FEMA. And that said, everything I say here is my opinion and my interpretation of the data and the literature that we have. So why should you be concerned about trauma exposure and occupational stress in fire service? First of all, firefighters have high rates of exposure. You all know that. That's no big surprise. We have a number of studies that have found elevated PTSD, in some studies as high as 37%. But our more recent work that gets a better sample of firefighters and uses better measures to determine whether somebody actually has PTSD have found that those rates are lower. That 37% is probably not accurate. And we really try and pin that rate of PTSD at around 20%, which is lower, just for a matter of perspective, lower than our returning OEF, OIF veterans, but higher than civilians. So it's a chunk of the people who are coming to work every day are affected by post-traumatic stress disorder. And that, I think, more concerning than the one diagnosis, across mental health diagnoses, you have 7% in fire service going out on early retirement because of the problems sometimes caused by the work that they do. What does PTSD look like? It has to begin, unlike any other mental health diagnosis. This is the only diagnosis that you have to have a specific event. Now, it may take 10 events to have the rest of the diagnosis, but you have to have a specific event. Firefighters have these events all the time. Some of my longitudinal research has shown that people have these events weekly, whereas civilians have them once in a lifetime, twice in a lifetime. After that event, you have to have re-experiencing of the event, and it has to come unbidden, untriggered. It pops in when you don't expect it. Now, it can be triggered, but to meet the diagnosis, it has to come from no specific trigger. Then there becomes a behavioral pattern where your firefighter starts to avoid anything that could trigger reminiscing or reminders of the event. There's a lot of numbing. That can be in overwork, it can be in overdrinking, it can be in drug use, it can be in exercise. And then increased arousal, or what clinicians call hypervigilance, so that people are always scanning the environment, always hyper alert, and likely to have an over-the-top physical response to anything that signals danger to them. And all of those symptoms have to come together in some kind of impairment to meet the full diagnosis. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't work. It means that their work performance is impaired relative to before the event. Okay? What does PTSD cost? The RAND report from 2008 estimated the economic impact of PTSD was between $4 and $6 billion over 2 years. Now, I use that figure because it matters still to fire service. In some departments, there's veterans hiring preference. Go those departments. But that means that veterans are overrepresented in your workforce. And so if they're coming in with lifetime exposure, they may have specific vulnerabilities. And that is going to have an effect downstream. Now, PTSD can be 100% disabling, meaning that some people can't actually work or can't actually perform at home. And when you think about every firefighter lost to service, not only is your city losing or town losing its initial investment, they're losing all the accumulated knowledge that comes with years of fire service. So you really don't want post-traumatic stress to develop into a chronic disabling condition. That said, there's a ton of fiction and about PTSD. And so in the fiction section, in the slide in front of you, is the idea, the myth, that PTSD isn't treatable. In fact, there are a bunch of good treatments that are available, and available widely by very skilled practitioners. There's a myth that PTSD means an end to career as a firefighter, and that's not at all true. If you manage the symptoms, people can continue to be valuable members of your service. There's promoted by the media the idea that all people with PTSD are at risk of going postal or, being involved in one of the hideous shooting events, and that's just media hype. Another myth that I think Pat alluded to is the stigma myth that it's not real, that if people just pulled themselves up by their bootstraps, they'd be able to carry on. That is I think best answered by saying that stigma is real. People stigmatize all the time, but stereotypes aren't accurate. They're just not. Any person who is suffering from PTSD will tell you that he or she, before they sought treatment, struggled a long time to take care of it by themselves. There's also the idea that time will just magically heal PTSD. And in fact, if somebody's gone all the way to a diagnosis, they usually require treatment to have at least some dose of treatment to get better. And getting better is a very active process. There isn't a magic pill. It's a lot of hard work. Now, there are other behavioral health problems that are associated with PTSD, and these are very important. We talked a little bit, or we heard a little bit about the alarming rates of suicide in the membership. Suicide is also usually linked to depression, suicidal ideation, and that attention focusing that happens with suicide is a hallmark of both PTSD and depression. So those behavioral health problems are linked together. When you have substance abuse and dependence on board, and it's very common, up to 50% of people with PTSD are actively misusing substances, sometimes all the way to dependence, then you're also going to see that downstream effect of an increase in violence. Now, on the last slide, I said that, that the going postal thing is a myth, but when people are using substances to medicate, they're much more at risk of making bad choices and acting out physically against others. And so that bumps up the violence factor. People with PTSD are more likely to have marital dissolution. We're working right now on some studies of marriage and family in firefighters, and there's really interesting stuff there. But by and large, firefighters have solid long-term relationships. That said, people with PTSD don't. And it can even run into homelessness. The number of homeless veterans, for instance, who have PTSD, it's the majority of homeless veterans who have PTSD or other significant mental health problems. So how can we tell who's going to be vulnerable? That's really been the focus of most of my longitudinal work. We have a number of studies right now that are showing that when social support is high, even with terrible exposure to terrible stressors, people are more likely to bounce and heal. And this is specific to firefighters. There is a group, however, that we've identified across 3 different studies that leaders need to be really aware of. If you have firefighters who are working in a station that has low social support, that the team doesn't function, that the team has a lot of negative interactions between them, and you have somebody in that team who it's always his fault or her fault. He's always identifying that he shoulda, coulda, woulda done things differently. Those are the people who will be most likely to have PTSD symptoms, depressive symptoms, anxiety symptoms, and probable alcohol abuse. In one particular study, you're really looking at big differences. The people that are in that low social support, high self-blame group have PTSD 12.8% of the time, versus the people in all the other crosses for that, high social support or low self-blame, those people, they're less than 2% of the time. So it's a really big difference. And similar differences with depression and anxiety. Going outside of my own research to people across the world, actually, Richard Bryant and his colleague, Dr. Guthrie, have looked at firefighters in Australia. They've done some really great work, and they've found that if people are making negative and catastrophic appraisals in general before a fire or an incident, If you hear them in the truck going, oh, this is going to be horrible, and so is not going to produce this and do that, and that's a person that's at risk of having PTSD 4 years down the road from a bad event. Our Oklahoma City bombing data show that PTSD symptoms going into doing that very important work led to an increase in drinking among firefighters and a fair amount of relapse for people who had solid recovery. In our current study right now, we're finding that people who say at the beginning of fire service when they're probies that they drink to cope are more likely to be veterans, and firefighters who are not veterans are more likely to say that they drink for recreational purposes or to improve social events. So you might want to watch for people who are drinking to cope with stressors, with memories, with symptoms. And then the other piece that we're just now exploring is that if there's low social support in a firefighter or in his or her station, and high occupational stress, like lots of financial problems, equipment failures, that sort of stuff, then those people are going to actually be more likely to think about suicide. Now, in that study, they're not behaving suicidally, but they're thinking about suicide, which is a warning sign. So I said I'd tell you what can be done to help. As leaders, you can work against stigma. You can look at places that people are stigmatizing mental health issues. You can know what the resources are that are available and make really good contacts. You'll hear more about those sorts of resources from our other panelists. You want to make sure that that treatment is evidence-based, and I cannot underline this enough. There are a lot of well-intentioned people who want to help, but they do not have the skills, or they're using skills that help with other problems but don't help with PTSD. So you want to make sure that the people that you're engaging to help are doing the treatments that actually work. You don't want any snake oil treatments, no matter how well-intended they are, and they're out there. If you see a warning sign, ask, what's going on? There is no harm in asking, and yet, because of stigma, people are afraid to ask. And then wherever you have the power to educate and empower other leaders in your fire departments to know what the warning signs are and to ask, do it. Get it done. And then I think, and this is a difficult issue because nobody wants to rule out people from fire service who could be good firefighters, but we do need to start thinking about pre-employment assessments of strengths and weaknesses. Not to rule people out, but to let people have a full understanding of where their vulnerabilities are. Any good resilience training program is going to say, you're strong in this, you're less strong in that, you got to work on that. And that's the kind of pre-employment assessment that we could be giving going forward. What do leaders need to look for? You want to have 3 levels of surveillance for PTSD. You want to look at the environment. You want to know what your city stressors are, what your departmental stressors are, what your specific station stressors are. You want to look at the team and working group level as well, and know, does that team work together? When they have a threat or a conflict, do they resolve it appropriately? Do they support wellness, or do they feed into stigma? And what can you do to change that as a leader? And you also want to look towards the maturity of your management in any given team or working group. And then you also have the level of the individual. In any social group, in any working group, there are people who are really good at kind of having the temperature, the mental health temperature of everybody on their team. And you want to know who those people are, and you want to use them to the advantage of health and wellness, not to stigma and illness. If you see big changes in work performance, in mood or irritability on the job, if you know that there are external to the job stressors that are big and compromising. If there are legal issues happening that may not come to the attention of the job, and if you hear somebody who's just perpetually hard on themselves, those are the people you want to ask about. And we do have, and the IAFF is working to get more information out about how you ask those questions effectively, because there are good and bad ways to ask the questions too. So what resources have an evidence base? Peer support has a very good evidence base, and you'll hear more about that. EAP has saved many, many lives and has also saved many, many resources, because a good functional EAP knows who can provide those evidence-based treatments I spoke about before. If you're searching for a treatment provider, look for the buzzwords cognitive behavioral. That's where the best evidence base is. The Institute of Medicine has a huge report that if you have trouble sleeping, you could read. But that report says very specifically that the best treatment is cognitive behavioral treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder. There are also really great community-based self-help groups, particularly AA, NA. Those groups are very effective, and they're as good in some cases as any of the professional treatments we have for certain aspects of the disorder. Then there are programs like psychological first aid and resilience training. Those were developed in the Army, Navy, and other branches of the armed forces, and they're getting a decent, it's not stellar, but a decent following that we should be tapping into. One thing that's understudied, but I would really encourage us to move forward on thinking more about, is how you provide effective leadership coaching. So when you've got people moving into leadership positions, who are their mentors, and are their mentors really well-versed in PTSD, and how can you get them well-versed in it if they're not? That slide that you all can access about fiction and fact, or myth and truth, distribute that. Educate, distribute, discuss, process. And then also make sure that you are aware of what your policy issues are around PTSD in your individual department, and you're ready to talk about it, because that's one of the biggest barriers that people who are suffering have, is they don't know what's available and they don't know how it's going to affect them on the job. And you as leaders can do a very good job of knowing what the perils and pitfalls are of navigating getting to care. And that's all I have to say. Did I make it in my 22 minutes? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gulliver. Our next panelist, Kenny Stuart has been a Seattle firefighter for 19 years and is currently a lieutenant on Ladder 8, serving the citizens of Ballard. Kenny is also president of the Seattle Firefighters Union, Local 27, representing over 1,000 members. He has been the union president since 2008 and has served in the leadership position in the union since 1998. Kenny is also a trustee on 2 healthcare trusts and is a member of the board of directors of the Seattle Bravest Charity, a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting firefighters and their families and members of the community in need, and has served on numerous other committees. Kenny has been in Seattle since 1982 and lives in Ballard, home of the deadliest catch Alaskan fishing fleet and the greatest number of bars per square mile in Seattle, which is not a recommended treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder. He has a Bachelor's of Arts degree from the University of Washington, and after graduating from college, he worked as a union carpenter, built bridges, and building for a living until he became a firefighter. Kenny is married to Colette, a Seattle public school teacher at Loyal Heights Elementary, and they have 2 sons who both attend Loyal Heights. He enjoys spending time with his family, fishing, mountain biking, skiing, surfing, but spends most of his time at the fire station, the Union Hall, or City Hall. Kenny finds great satisfaction in helping others and feels very fortunate to have the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of so many people in so many ways. Please help me with the invitation to Kenny Stuart. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. And first of all, I wanted to thank General President Schaeberger and Pat for inviting me here today to speak to you. And I want to recognize the extraordinary commitment of Seattle firefighters and firefighters across the country for basically serving others in a way that they not only risk cardiac events, trauma, but also, as we know, PTSD and other issues that can lead to personal crisis. My remarks are primarily based around my experience as a union officer and president and how we've dealt with our members who've expressed the need or come to us for help. First of all, a little bit about the Seattle Fire Department in Seattle. You can see on the slide here a few details. The most important thing right now is that we're the home of the Seahawks, and they're going for their second win in just less than a week. And one thing I did want to point out is our uniformed personnel is 981. We're generally over 1,000. And one of the things that I've focused on, and Suzy talked about, Dr. Gulliver talked about things that we can recognize as leaders, is our department has reduced the number of personnel to save money. One of the things that that's done is increase the amount of overtime that our members work. That's had a profound impact on the department's ability to provide service, to find people to work, and for members dealing with their family life and other things they had to deal with, something that was not expected or planned for, and that we have recognized is leading to more stress for our firefighters. So we looked at, and we've talked about this, as everybody has across the country, looking at what sort of things contribute to stress, and focusing on what can we fix, what can we change, and what can't we. And obviously, there's been an increased run volume in Seattle as across the country. Sleep deprivation and disorders are something that firefighters deal with across the country. PTSD, as we're talking about. But there's a host of others, military experience, as was mentioned, an increase in the all hazards disciplines, increased training demands. YouTube and internet is something that we've talked about. One of the great things about YouTube and the internet is it helps you in training, provides a plethora of images and videos that you can use in training. The other thing it does is it demonstrates to firefighters everything that can go wrong and everything that can happen to them that they may not have seen or heard of before. And all that does is increase the number of images and the ideas when you're responding. And I mentioned a few other items here. State, municipal, department budget cuts is something that's impacted everybody when we go into negotiations, for example, especially when people are having, firefighters are having financial issues, tensions go up, and the economy and changing demographics. We have a high retirement rate in Seattle, and we have a lot of members that had a 10-year plan to retire, and the economy has changed that. And all of those things are stressors for our firefighters. So one of the things that we've really come to rely on is an organization called Safe Call Now. And we've been sharing this with folks across the country, not as the answer, but as one way and one tool that we've used that unions and departments across the country could look at, learn from, and model their response to crisis with firefighters in their departments. And Safe Call Now is a confidential, comprehensive 24-hour crisis referral service for all public safety employees, all emergency services personnel and their family members nationwide. The founder, Sean Riley, there's a brief bio here. Sean was a police officer, and he went through a personal crisis. Drugs and alcohol factored into him losing his career and his family. And he's dedicated himself to making sure that doesn't happen to anyone else. And he's the founder of this organization that we support. Safe Call Now is a state of Washington organization, but really their help doesn't know any borders. And we've called Sean for family members, for friends. Firefighters have been referred from across the country. There's a few cities here listed. They have limited resources, but when somebody calls, they respond. They've also partnered with the HIMSS program, which I don't know a tremendous amount about. They do. But it was a program designed for airplane pilots and doctors, and has had a very high success rate for long-term mental health and substance abuse. And I bring this up because I don't know that much about PTSD. I learned quite a bit just this morning from Dr. Gulliver. But I have a resource that I can call when I have a member come to me who is constantly looking for partners and trying to refine their ability to help our firefighters. So we rely on them a great deal. Speaking of partners, they've got a variety of sponsors and partners. I've got a list here. They have been broadening their reach and trying to find new and different ways to work with public safety personnel. And we have brought together a large group of individuals who are coming from the community wanting to help firefighters and do their part. So what does Safe Call Now do for us? They provide a confidential lifeline for firefighters in trouble. We hand out business cards, which, by the way, I've brought a box with me, and you can take a look at them. You can have one if you want. We try to get these cards into the hands of our firefighters, to our officers, to the administration, so that if they won't come to the administration, if they won't talk to their doctor, if they won't talk to their family, if they won't come and call me, they can at least call this card of some faceless person on the other end of the line. It's another place to call. It connects firefighters with the most effective treatment, and I'll talk about that in a minute. The Safe Call Now builds coalitions of providers to treat each individual according to their needs. And our experience has been they've had almost a 100% success rate with the individuals who've called them. I'm not going to define what that 100% success rate looks like, but all of the individuals who have contacted them, who've come back and responded to us, or through Safe Call Now, it's had a tremendous impact and has been beneficial to them for their careers and their personal lives. The other thing that Safe Call Now does is they know the system and they work with insurance companies to help firefighters get expensive treatment. So as a union president, I may field a phone call at 3 in the morning from somebody who received a DUI or is having some problems. They want to get help. They're in crisis. And what becomes apparent in a lot of these situations is insurance comes in and money becomes a factor. And Safe Call Now, again, one of the things that they offer to us is an understanding of what insurance companies will pay for, what diagnoses will get you treatment, which diagnoses put the financial burden on the member. And for example, last year, they were able to place a state patrol officer in Bayside, Marin into a program that cost $50,000 that we may have had to pay for, or Bayside Marin may have had to pay for, the member, and instead they were able to get insurance to cover it. For us in Seattle, Safe Call Now is often a much better option for firefighters compared to our EAP program, which we have in Seattle, family physician, friends, family, or other firefighters. All of these things have been tried by some firefighters at one time or another to a greater or lesser degree. Safe Call Now is just another option that we have and we rely on heavily. So how does it help unions and how does it help Local 27? Well, it helps our members deal with their problems. The personal call the call takers are firefighters and police officers. And a large majority of them are individuals who've had some type of personal crisis. They receive training and they know at least somewhat what the person on the other end of the phone is dealing with. So even if they don't get referred on, they've got somebody to talk to they don't work with, is not going to judge them, it's not going to end up in their personnel file or have an impact on their career or their personal life. It reduces the PR issues. We work with our management in trying to get individuals into Safe Call Now or into a program as early as possible so that these sorts of things don't end up out in the press. It reduces the grievances that we have, because if we can get this individual into help, we can reduce discipline from our department. It saves us money in representing our members. And finally, it ensures that fire departments provide the best service to citizens. If we take care of our firefighters and make sure that they have what they need, our firefighters are going to be able to take care of the citizens. So Dr. Gulliver alluded to this, and this research comes from Safe Call Now. But the numbers are that 15 to 22% of firefighters have some type of PTSD, according to the latest research. 50% of those suffering with PTSD turn to substance abuse, which is about 2 times the amount of the general population. So I just did some quick math, and you can check it for me. About 350,000 IAFF firefighters, PTSD 70,000, substance abuse 35,000. It's a lot of firefighters. So finally, our experience. We've been partnered with Safe Call Now since 2009. Over 100 Local 27 members have called Safe Call Now in the first year. We make an annual contribution to keep the organization floating, and that's a pittance compared to the service that we get back from them. The average number of calls that Safe Call Now takes each year is about 2,000, and they've helped about 200 firefighters or family members from our department. And this isn't just about drugs or alcohol, it's also about family, medical problems, financial problems, and as we've talked about here today, PTSD. Safe Call Now has saved the careers and lives of many Local 27 members, and it's benefited the citizens of Seattle. We've also partnered with law firms, legal counsel, one of which is Goldenwood, shameless plug for Norm Golden. And what we've found is by having Safe Call Now, using legal counsel, and having a plan in place ahead of time, first of all, I know what to do at 3 in the morning when I get the phone call. And after I set things in place, I have some amount of confidence that I've done everything I can as union president to try to help a firefighter who really needs help. So thank you very much for having me here, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, President Stuart. And I really just want to echo what he said. I mean, we have a lot of leaders here. We have some new leaders here. We have new members of the executive board. And behavioral health issues will continue to be something that not only do you have to address, but you have to get those programs in place. Too often when we go out and look at, and some of the larger events, we look at those fire departments after maybe it's an active shooter, maybe it's a disaster from Katrina to across the country. We look at the services prior to that event. We look at what was in place, and so too often the services aren't there. So you really need to be more proactive. It's not reactive. Unfortunately, the executive board, you will be representing members, and you better make sure that we have those services in place. And I think Kenny just really went over that, how important it is for him as a union president, long-time union president, how important to have those services in place, be able to use those services, and have access to services prior to events happening. Our next presenter, Joe Schulle, is president of Local 22 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Prior to entering the Philadelphia Fire Department, Joe served in the U.S. Air Force, and after being discharged from active duty in 1991, he continued to serve in the Pennsylvania Air National Guard until 1996. Joe joined the fire department in 1992 and has worked in many companies throughout the city of Philadelphia. Joe has risen through the ranks to his current position of battalion chief. He is currently serving as president of Local 22. Joe re-entered school in 2007 and is currently working towards a degree in public safety. Joe has been married for 18 years to his lovely wife, Diane, and they reside in the northeast section of the city with their 2 children, Jennifer and Brian. Throughout his career, Joe has been a staunch supporter of Local 22 and its membership. He testified in previous Act 111 arbitration hearing, in addition to testifying at the recent Philadelphia City Council hearings regarding firefighter transfers. He took part in the recent Department of Justice site Problem Identification and Resolution of Issues Program, meeting regarding race relations in the Philadelphia Fire Department. Joe has had his, over the last year, and especially as the president, he has had his not only PTSD, but suicides in the Philadelphia Fire Department. And Joe, what I know about Joe is that he is trying desperately to make sure that the programs are in place, that the training's in place. And he brings a lot to the table as an individual and wanting to do the right thing. Please welcome President Schulle.
Good morning, General President. Thank you for having me here today. I appreciate it. I went through my presentation probably 36 times, changing this continually. And the reason for that is I'm very passionate about this issue, and I can really go on and on. But I kind of have a different perspective in that I want to take a step back. First, I want to take disorder off of it, right? Disorder is when you're getting too far down the line here. We want to identify stressful events, we want to identify stress in people's lives, and we want to reduce that before we get to disorder, right? That's really the idea to me. So the General President spoke about a discussion we had yesterday where we were basically on a fire, and we were sitting on a family of 3 that was melted into the bed. It's a terrible event. Now, what did we do as a company when we went back to the station? Right? We didn't sit at the table and all hug and sing Kumbaya or anything like that. What we did, we went back to the station and we were joking around with each other over stupid, nonsense. But really, the reality is, we were together. We all knew it was really messed up what we've seen, and that was the beginning of the process to be able to function. And I just want to, like I said, my main point I think is to say that we have to identify it early. We have to work to stop it before it gets too far down the line. As I said in my presentation, I'm going to be all over the place, and I apologize. This is the kind of subject it is to me. Yesterday afternoon, at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I got an email from one of my members. The fire department has a mass rotation policy in Philadelphia where every 5 years they transfer every firefighter all over the place. So I was trying to figure out how to kind of lay it out and explain it to you guys here today. And then I received this email. So what I decided to do was just, I paraphrased it a little bit to shorten it up, but I think it's really telling because the guy that sent me this email, he's 15 years on a job and he didn't even know what to do with it. He just typed up this letter. He didn't know who to send it to. He didn't know what to do with it. He just typed up this letter and sent it to me and say, what the heck can we do now? And I just want to read it to you to kind of put this in perspective. As a firefighter for the past 15 years, I'm fully aware of the deal. I accept the deal. I think we all do. The deal I'm referring to is the mental side of the job and the undeniable toll it takes on all of us over time. For the most part, I believe firefighters try not to bring their work home with them. While I can't speak for others, the reason I adhere to this principle is for this simple reason. I don't want to expose my family to the ugly side of my profession. It's my job, not theirs. And my job as a firefighter is to protect others, and my job as a husband and a father is to protect my family. And one of the way I accomplish this is by not bringing my work home with me, literally. However, as everybody knows, the cold, stark truth is someone has to do this job. No one has a gun to my head, so no one is forcing me to do this job. I do it willingly, but make no mistake about it. I did not choose this profession. This profession chose me. To talk about such matters requires an extremely high level of trust. However, the kind of trust that's built over years and years of working together side by side in the same firehouse. This trust is built and strengthened by crawling down hallways together, having each other's back, and working through some extremely stressful situations. The highest level of teamwork, and it doesn't happen overnight. By doing these things together, using this cohesive team concept, we literally learn everything there is to know about one another. So much so that we can sometimes communicate on a fire ground without hardly saying a word. We learn to read each other extremely well. We also know when a friend or coworker is struggling to recognize, and we recognize when behavior patterns change. We usually confront it and talk it out, at least we try to. Being healthy mentally is just as vital to the success of a company as training and hitting the gym. And he goes on. Even with this incredible support structure, we still have members that unfortunately take their own life. I will tell you the effects of at least 2 of them. And he's speaking of the mass rotation here. Never truly getting to know or trust one another enough to open up and get honest if something's on their mind. Number 2, not having coworkers truly get to know each other well enough to recognize without being told that something's amiss, tragically slipping through the cracks, so to speak. Admittedly, we all knew the risk of the job when we signed up. If it means saving a life, it's a risk most of us are willing to take. Yes, it's tough when we lose one of our own to the horrors of fire or a falling wall, but sometimes it's even tougher when we lose one of our own to the horrors that occasionally manifest in our minds from all of what we've seen or had to endure over the years. Like I said, this came from one of my members today based on this mass rotation policy. And the reason I wanted to just read what his words are is he speaks for 2,000 members in the fire department right now, that they are in distress over being shuffled all over the city. And as I move into my presentation now, I just kind of want to focus on what's happened in Philadelphia a little bit and then get into what we want to do about it. So why am I here? We need to get our administrators and our elected officials to realize that there's a responsibility to ensure we are mentally healthy as well as physically healthy, and that there's benefits to keeping the guys and the girls in the fire service mentally healthy. The entire panel either spoke or will speak about, reduced sick usage, the cost of generating an employee, the cost of the training, and then losing them early on in their career. So we have to somehow articulate this data to the decision makers to start to get them to recognize what's going on. It's been a tough couple of years in Philadelphia. Many of us know the devastating effects of a line of duty death. And it truly resonates throughout the departments. And as I said, I know that many of us have experienced. In Philadelphia, since April 9, 2012, we experienced 4 guys that passed in the line of duty. Bob Neary and Dan Sweeney on April 9, 2012, Mike Goodwin on April 6, 2013, and Joyce Craig December 9th of last year. It's crushing. It's crushing to the guys in the station, and it's crushing to the entire department. And as it keeps happening, it just piles up. And when Bob and Dan died, people were sad, right? The members in the department were sad. Now what I see with Joyce's passing, guys are angry now. They're tired of it. It's when's it going to stop? It's a whole almost, I guess it's the phases of healing or whatever, but really it's the guys are tired of seeing this. And so when you consider this, what is, compared to the national stats, compared to typically, in the fire service, experiencing 4 fire deaths in 2.5 years, what does that do as far as the stress level on the membership? And then to add to it, we actually have 5 suicides since 2011. After I submitted the slides, one of our members, Scott Florkowski, killed himself on January 10th, just 2.5 weeks ago. But we have Jack Slavinsky killed himself in June 25th, 2011. Dave Pinella, 9/25/2011. Bobby Blanks, October 2012. Timmy Gill, September 2013. And now here we are, 2015, with another suicide. It's unacceptable, right? It's unacceptable. But here's the thing. Suicide's just the worst manifestation of post-traumatic stress, acute stress, whatever you want to call it. It's obviously the worst, but all these other things also affect your life, whether it's too much drinking, whether it's destroying your marriage, whether it's drug use. All of these things have negative implications. So this stresses on the job, I'm not going to really cover because it was already discussed. But I do want to hit on a little bit what's going on in Philadelphia. And try and tie it into stress, post-traumatic stress, acute stress. So what has happened in Philadelphia in recent years? They changed his work schedule. They put paramedics on a steady night shift. They separated the paramedics and firefighters. They changed the firefighter schedules from 10s and 14s to 4 12-hour days. That really caused disruptions in people's lives, right? Then they created this mass rotation for paramedics every 3 years, for firefighters every 5 years. So again, you could create complete upheaval in everybody's lives, all these guys' lives. And then there's some things that, with financial considerations, they can't do too much about the administration, deteriorating fire stations, apparatus, okay, as long as they're safe enough to operate and we can deal with that. I mean, we all know this kind of struggle. But I wanted to focus on the things that they can handle. They've had so much complaint and frustration over this mass rotation policy, but they still implement it. And what this is doing, they just did it in January. So the firefighter rotation came out Friday. The union got roughly 50 phone calls from guys, of the 93 guys transferred, 50 phone calls of guys that their lives is completely turned around. They're on different platoons, they're across the city, and it's just a stress that's not needed. When you're looking at a profession that's typically number one or number two of all professions when you're looking at the stress of the job, why are you trying to add to it? Why are you doing anything to add to the profession? The job should be to try and lower the level of stress on the member, not increase it. Big issue in our fire department right now, and again, when we talk about adding to the stress, is the discipline. Right now, we still have a policy in the Philadelphia Fire Department that every intersection accident is preventable and it results in a 48-hour suspension. Every intersection accident. So you drive through a green light, a passenger car with a drunk driver drives through a red light and smashes into you, you're guilty in the Philadelphia Fire Department, and that gets you a 48-hour suspension. Okay? So what does that do to the membership? Again, you're increasing the level of stress. So these guys, it's not easy driving a fire truck to begin with, and now you're putting this level of stress on them where you're not going to get a paycheck for a week. You get in an accident, you're not going to get a paycheck for a week. So when you put this kind of pressure, it keeps, I kind of use the analogy, you're at a cliff, and every little thing you do, you're just pushing the person closer to the cliff. And I'm not saying that they're going to kill themselves, but they're going to react negatively in some way. So I do have to go back a brief moment because I skipped over this when I was talking about the suicides. So just to kind of outline a little bit of what happened with Jack Slavinsky. Jack Slavinsky was one of the most well-liked guys in the fire department, really a great guy. Jack was on the fire ground a few years back when Lieutenant Derek Harvey passed in the line of duty. And he shouldered a lot of responsibility. Even though he should have shouldered none, he did. It's post-traumatic stress. He carried this responsibility with him. So now he's going through some family problems, and then he poses for a calendar, a charity calendar for raising money for, I forget even what the charity was, but it was a firefighter-based charity, and he posed without a shirt on, right? The commissioner brings him in. They're going to bounce him out of his assignment and suspend him. Posing for a calendar. So, we made this into a media circus, and eventually the commissioner relented and left him there. 2 months later, Jack killed himself. Okay? Am I saying that caused it? No, I'm not. But what I'm saying is that you're just pushing for no reason. You're pushing people for no reason, and it doesn't make any good sense. And you see what the potential results are. When Scott passed away on January 10th, one of the first calls I got was from Jerry Slavinsky, who's Jack's mom. And she's calling to ask, what can I do to help? That's how upset she is and frustrated. Now, Jack died 3 years ago. And the implications to the families that are left behind, it's really crushing. So as I was talking about discipline a little bit, I just want to give a couple examples just to give a full perspective before I can kind of get into what we're going to do to try and change things. One of my members is in Marine Corps Reserves. He served 3 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan over the last 10 years. Soon after returning from his final tour, he was notified, again, about this mass rotation policy that he was being removed from his station. So he reacted negatively. He went on Facebook and wrote some stuff on Facebook. So we get wind of it, the department brings them in for this investigation, and as a result, we get this guy hooked up with the VA, hooked up with some psychiatrists, and he's really making progress to getting better, right? And so you think it's a success story. You know, we go to the department saying, listen, this guy's, it's documented, post-traumatic stress, this is what he's been through, you know, he's doing this, this, and this to get better. The fire department's reaction was to transfer him and give him a 48-hour suspension. So now what you got is, this same guy, he's still off with stress 9 months later. So what did that benefit? What was the process? What was the thought process in doing this? Why would you do it? You know, you have a guy, he has a documented illness. He didn't shoot anybody. He posted something stupid on the computer. He apologized, and then he was getting help. It's really the definition of discipline, ain't it? Change unwanted behavior. But that's not what happened here. You know, you still drop the hammer on him. So now, as Suzy was talking about, now you lose the productivity of this guy. You lose 9 months. He's using sick time. You're paying somebody time and a half to fill his spot. He might never come back, you know? It just doesn't make sense. Let me see if I can catch up on my slides here. And this kind of goes in, I know it was addressed already, so I'm not going to go back into it, but the effects of stress, and really, you know, before post-traumatic stress disorder, we're talking really about poor decision-making. You know, a lot of this is, it circles back to, you know, either the increased drinking, the drug use, it's poor decision-making because you're not thinking logically. You know, when I flew down here, and I'm not going to, like, go into this too much, but when I flew down here, I was actually sitting next to the dean of some college out in Florida. And he was a doctor, I forget what he was doctoring, but he was a brain expert, right? And so we were talking, and we got to talking about post-traumatic stress, and he made a statement to me as we were talking about it. He said, you know, you have the conversation and you hear people talk about, you know, toughen up, and, you know, and he said, you know, I can give you a glass of liquid that'll make you cry like a baby. You know, that there's these kind of drugs out there. So it's sociology, it's in your chemistry. It's not, you know, it's not, you can't toughen up and get away from this. You know, it's, everybody has a breaking point. That's what it comes down to. Mine might be here and yours might be here, but everybody has a breaking point, right? So what do you then do, knowing that everybody has a breaking point? This is just basics, and I'm far from a doctor, but this is just basic common sense. When we have acute stressors in our profession, you have a recovery time. You either have downtime in the station, you have days off, you have family life, things that are good that gives you a chance to recover. It's not any different than working out. You know, if you go for a 10-mile run, do you go for a 10-mile run the next day? No, you take time, let your muscles recover, and then you're able to produce again. So what we're experiencing in the Philadelphia Fire Department is there's no time to recover, right? Because you're going, you have the stress of discipline, you have the stress of the mass rotation, you add the home life, you add 4 firefighter fatalities, you add 5 suicides to it. Now there's no time to recover. You're not, it's just constantly, you know, it's a pounding on you. And then what our members are experiencing is, then you have the sledgehammer sitting on top of you that if you step out of line, the hammer is going to be dropped. Right? So now we have more and more incidences of people getting in trouble and people acting out because they just can't, nobody can constantly be under that type of pressure without breaking to some extent. And like I said, it's not, everybody's not going to be the extreme, but increased drinking, drug use, you know the gauntlet. Okay, so I have to make one more thing about suicides. After Scott killed himself, I was down in Union Hall and I was talking to an old timer, and the guy said to me, I equate guys that killed himself to a fireman not being able to make the back bedroom. He just quit. He just gave up, right? So as we're trying to move forward, and it's great that there's a full room of people here, but to recognize that that's still, that idea, that mentality still exists, you know, that this guy just quit. That has nothing to do with it. You know, it has nothing to do with it. And that's one of the things we have to get past. So what are we hoping to do? I got a minute and a half. Okay. So what are we looking to do? We're looking to show the administration what their actions are doing to the membership. and what it's costing the city and what it's costing the taxpayers and the toll it's taken on our membership. So we need data to support it. Everything nowadays is driven by data. And, one of the conversations we had a little bit ago was that, you look at a lot of these companies that do suicide prevention, stuff like that. It's very hard to accumulate that kind of data, because if you save somebody's life, if somebody calls that number and it saves their life, well, there's nothing to report, because you really don't know if you saved his life or not, because was he going to kill himself? Was he not going to kill himself? But we need data to support, and I should say, in all fairness, we want to accumulate the data and see if what we believe is true. So the plan is, in Philadelphia, we want to start a study up, not just post-traumatic stress disorder, a study on stress. And the idea on the short term is to limit the study to paramedics for the first wave, because it's a smaller sample size. And some of the things we want to look into is their workload, their working conditions, recent changes to policies, and the results, how these guys now feel about their job. And I don't know how it is across the country, but in Philadelphia, we have a huge problem with paramedic turnover. People quitting. You just wake up, I ain't doing this no more. So why paramedics? Smaller sample size, easier to manage. Similar problems to the fire side, but there are also some specific issues. Okay, so, and I just want to hit them for a little bit, because it kind of lays out what they're doing. So, time between runs. 3 years ago, Philadelphia is the busiest EMS system per medic unit in the country. Okay, so keeping that in mind, what they did to help them out, because it's the busiest EMS system in the country, is reduce their hospital time from 30 minutes to 20 minutes. So they used to be able to have 30 minutes in the hospital between runs, restore your gear, complete the paperwork. Now they got 20 minutes in the hospital to complete. So basically you're saying, all right, this gallon's full, we're going to put another half a gallon in it. And that's basically, we have medic units doing nearly 10,000 runs a year. I mean, they're out all the time, and you're saying, okay, now you get less time. And then when you kind of look at the whole system in EMS, there's no opportunity for a medic or a firefighter working in a medic unit to change over at the end of a shift. So a shift ends at 8 o'clock. There's no policy in place within the fire department to say, okay, we're going to slowly stagger people to go out of service. It's not uncommon for these guys to be, the off-going platoon to be out on the street until their shift ends at 8 o'clock till 11 o'clock at night. Then you have the oncoming platoon sitting in the station doing nothing. And you say, well, where's the logic in that? But it's even beyond that. So that's one of the smaller issues compared to if there's nothing in place for a paramedic to use the bathroom. If you got to use the bathroom, you get a run, too bad. And if you're not out the door in a minute, they're going to report you, and it's 48 hours. Suspensions start at 48 hours in Philadelphia. And so that's why we're pretty much trying to pick the paramedics first, because their working conditions are deteriorating rapidly, and every change that the fire department makes it's trying to make their numbers look better, but it's trying to fit more into the same jar. So in Philadelphia, we have an EAP like many other programs. We have critical incident debriefings for the fire side, but there's nothing in place for the EMS side. A couple years ago, there was a highly publicized building collapse on 22nd Street in Philadelphia. 6 or 7 people died, I think it was. So I was on the fire ground that night, and I went back to the station. I got called by a paramedic, and she said, Chief, there's a lot of young paramedics on this job, on this assignment, that probably never seen anything like this. I said, no problem. I called up our EAP program. I went through our deputy chief, called up the EAP program. Said, yeah, can you come out and talk to these guys? Their response was, it has to be field directed. It's a field battalion chief. You got a call from a field deputy chief, but they didn't want to come out and talk to these guys because, whatever the reason was, it's really irrelevant. Yeah. So what are the expected results? All the items we identified increases the stress on a member, inversely reducing the individual's threshold for dealing with acute events. So everything's good in your life, you're happy, something bad happens, you're more capable of dealing with it than if everything's bad and then something bad happens. And that's how you wind up going off the cliff. So we're trying to show, and we think our data is going to show, that you're, like I said, you're slowly pushing these people to the cliff, and then you're blaming them when they go off. So I hit that. Okay, then what? So there's departments in this country and Canada that work well, that are efficient, that have members that are happy, that have guys that have great job satisfaction. And once the data is accumulated in Philadelphia, it's our hope that other cities will participate as well. And we can compare the data with well-run departments with happy employees, along with departments with multiple challenges. We can use other data like sick leave use, turnover, discipline, injuries to kind of prove our point. And then as a group, when you have a large amount of a sample size, to say, this is what you're doing. This is what's going on in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Chicago, and this is the results it's having on the membership. And on the positive side, in these three cities, this is the results they have. 25% reduction in sick time, 20% reduction in injuries, less discipline, and you can go right down the line to show this is what's going on. And then if we can get then we can have analytical data to go to the decision makers, go to our council people, go to the mayor and say, here's the data that we've accumulated from across the country that shows stress is a problem, and the fire department administration and the city administration needs to reduce the stress on these guys, their daily stress, so that they'll be able to deal with the bad events better. I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe, for that presentation. Our next presenter is Frank Leto, IAFF Local 854, FDNY. Captain Frank Leto was a 31-year veteran of the FDNY and Deputy Director of its Counseling Services Unit. His association with the CSU began over 20 years ago as a crisis counselor for incidents such as line-of-duty deaths and mass casualty events. On September 11, 2001, he responded to the World Trade Center as an officer in charge of a rescue team. Since 9/11, Captain Leto has developed innovative outreach, counseling, and education programs for firefighters and their families who have experienced potentially traumatic events. In addition to his work as Deputy Director of the Counseling Service Unit and its staff of over 90, he has worked closely with the International Association of Firefighters to develop behavioral health protocols and to aid departments nationwide after major incidents. Captain Leto has also traveled internationally to share his experience with fire departments in Northern Ireland, the Netherlands, in Japan, and to aid military personnel, military firefighters. He has assisted the London Fire Brigade after the transit bombing of 2005 and the urban search and rescue teams following the devastating earthquake in Haiti in 2010. Through his work with the IAFF and FDNY, he has supported numerous departments, including those on the Gulf Coast after Katrina, Charleston, South Carolina, and Aurora, Colorado after the theater shooting, and more recently in Boston following the marathon bombing. Frank was one of the first graduates of the West Point FDNY Terrorism and Counterterrorism Program, and also is a certified employees assistance professional. Please welcome Captain Frank Leto.
I want to thank the General President for having me here to speak today. I want to thank the IAFF for the resources that they are putting into behavioral health. Also want to thank the men and women at Health and Safety, Pat Morrison, Jim Brinkley, the tremendous work that they're doing, working tirelessly with members across the country with behavioral health. Behavioral health programs should be part of the fabric of your department. It should be, we have a rotation for fixing our rigs, working with our equipment. How about our members? Time and time again, we've gone around the country after major incidents and sat down with the local, with administrators, and talked about their programs. They do not exist. You cannot develop a program after an incident. It doesn't work. You're so far behind the 8 ball. After 9/11, we would visit fire stations with the IAFF and our members at FDNY. We would visit 1, 2, 3, 4 times. On the 5th time, they would say to us, "Why haven't you been here before?" So not only did they not know what we were talking about, they didn't even remember us being there. So if you think you're going to teach about these programs or develop a program after an incident, it's not going to work. It has to be done now. These programs have to be developed. When you leave here back from Anaheim, you have to go home and start working on developing program. Lives depend on it. Our members' lives depend on it. So I'm going to pose a few questions to you. How would your department react if a member sought help for PTSD? Just think about this. How would they react today if a member sought help for PTSD? Do members of your department, do administrators, do your union leaders know what it looks like? Do they know what PTSD looks like? Who would they notify? Are you confident that your department is prepared for a member with a behavioral health problem? Are your supervisors and members able to recognize the signs and symptoms of PTSD? We've talked a lot about it here today, but will members of your department be able to recognize it? Are there policies and protocols in place to support your members? And have resources been established for your members that have been identified with PTSD? One of the things we do in New York is education. Now, education is probably the most important part of a behavioral health program. We have a peer program, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but we go to visit fire stations, firehouses, and we talk about PTSD. So we'll have maybe a 10 or 15-minute presentation because the attention span isn't that great. But we talk about PTSD for 10 or 15 minutes. Now we're in a station, a family, and now we have a discussion. So we can talk about PTSD in a classroom, but you're not going to open up that discussion. So when you're there with the 10 or 11 men and women of a station, you have that open discussion. And now we start talking about depression and substance abuse, and ideas start flying. And it becomes more a part of the fabric of that station. The stigma starts to reduce because now they're saying, you know what, my wife suffers from depression. You know, I have a substance abuse problem. Yes, I know someone with PTSD. And as the stigma reduces, there's more likely a chance that somebody will reach out for help. And you just don't only do it in the station. It has to be done everywhere in your department. At new recruits, we have a half a day with our new recruits, what we call probies in New York, where we talk about behavioral health, the resources that are available in our department, so they don't have the fear of stepping forward. And we do that training with our peers. So it's a trusted firefighter, a trusted man or woman that's been on the department is talking about these issues with our members. They may even come up and say, you know, I suffered from PTSD. I went to the counseling service unit. I reached out to this doctor, and this is where I am today. So let them know right when they come on a department that this is one of our job issues. This is something that can and may happen to you. And this is where you can go to get help. You could put information on your job website or your local's website. It doesn't have to be, 30 pages. It just could be a small little snippet on what PTSD looks like and where you can go to get help for it. So the objectives of your education is you want to inform members how to identify PTSD. 90% of the healing that goes on in a fire department, in a fire is in the fire station. It's right around that kitchen table. 90% of when Joe mentioned coming back from a run is right there. So if we have our members, all our members educated, they'll be able to identify someone before we get to that late stage of a problem. I mean, too many times in my career, we enabled people, we took care of them right till they died. We watched them lose their homes, lose their families. We worked for them. When they called in, we worked the tour. If they didn't show up for a run, we covered up that, and we watched them deteriorate. Those days have to be over. So what do you want to educate you, and specific to PTSD, you want to educate your members about, it's normal. 20% of our members are going to suffer from PTSD at one point in their career. You've heard it here, the research shows that. So 1 in 5 of us are going to suffer from this. When you have a pre-existing condition, many of our members are in the military or come from the military, that's going to increase their chances for PTSD. But in most cases, exposure to a traumatic event is not going to cause PTSD. So we can't have that. We can't presume that because you were involved in a line of duty death, that you're going to be suffering from PTSD. But we have to watch those people. We had a recent line of duty death in New York, Lieutenant Matt Amblis, and the chief of Brooklyn, who is now the chief of the department, gave me a call at the time, and he said, Frank, I want to put everyone out on medical leave right away. And I said, Chief, I think that's a great idea, but let's talk to them first. Let's see if that's what they want. Let's give them that option. And, many of them said, you know what, no, I want to be at the firehouse. I want to continue doing my work. I don't want to be out on medical leave. So we gave them the option. It has to be up to them. And we have to be able to inform members of the resources available. Because when you have a problem, you don't want to be looking in the yellow pages. You don't want, the union officials like, okay, what are we going to do now? These resources have to be established. Time and time again, when we've gone around the country, there's no established resources. There's no connection between the community and the doctors that want to help us and the counselors in the community and the firehouse and the fire department. So let's develop those connections today. Let's find people that want to work with us. Let's look at the insurance. Let's do that today. So when someone presents themselves with these problems, we can say, you know what, there's a person that's going to take our insurance, that we've talked to, that knows our department. Give them a call instead of scrambling, which most of us are doing right now. One of the things that we've done in New York is education campaigns with our peer program. So these are posters that you'll see in every firehouse and every EMS station in New York. And we had a suicide awareness campaign. Again, our peers are about 40 or 50 retired members that are educated, that visit stations on a regular basis. And they go in with a poster and an education piece. It's put up on the wall, and we talk about suicide awareness. Again, with that small group. This is another one we did for post-traumatic stress, and you don't see disorder there because we want to catch it before it's a disorder. So we talk about post-traumatic stress. And again, a real discussion among people that really care about each other. We've done a number of these campaigns. Substance abuse campaign, we're doing a domestic violence campaign right now. Again, awareness of domestic violence. So what happens with education? The knowledge and understanding of PTSD will increase. And when the knowledge and awareness increases, what every speaker spoke about here is stigma. Stigma, the internal stigma of when a member doesn't want to appear weak. It's that feeling inside that I don't want to reach out because I don't want to feel weak. And what happens is you get sicker. It prevents them from seeking help. And it's that external stigma from the department and the members of the department that you be perceived negatively. So it's coming from within and without, and it's devastating. So education is going to reduce that. Peer programs, they're really simple to develop. You just need a few members that care and want to spend some time doing station visits. So our peers do regular station visits. I can guarantee you today there are our peers, probably 4 or 5 teams out there doing regular station visits, getting to know the members, talking about whatever's going on in their lives. If they're having problems at home, marital issues, depression, problem with the teen drinking, a discussion, resources, goes on every day. Responding to traumatic events. Our peers who respond to traumatic events, now they're a well-known commodity. They're not showing up to a station that they don't know. They've been there dozens of times. And they don't go in and take the show over. They go there as support, like a good neighbor. What is it that you need? If you had a devastating issue in your family, a loss of life in your family, what would your neighbor do? Your neighbor would come and ask you what you need. That's what our peers do. They don't sit in the middle of a living room and tell you how to grieve or what you should be doing. No, they're just there for support. And our peers also, like I said, provide educational campaigns. Also, we work very closely with our chaplains. So what should your department be doing? Locate available resources. They're there. I guarantee you they're there. It doesn't make a difference how rural your department is. You can find resources. Find out who your EAP or MEAP is. We've gone to departments and sat with members of the board, and they've never even talked to the EAP. We don't trust them. We don't like them. Try to develop a resource, them as a resource. What can they provide? There are therapists and psychiatrists in the community. Find who they are. Hospitals. If a person had a substance abuse problem, is there a detox that takes the insurance? Is there a rehab? Let's not scramble when somebody presents themselves. Let's get them established right away. And let's know the insurance. So not only do they have a behavioral health problem, they're going to have a financial problem if they go to a doctor or a hospital and the insurance hasn't been vetted. Let's take a look at our policies and procedures. Let's identify an advocate in each department, somebody that has some authority to make changes, to develop these behavioral health programs. They can be done at a very low cost if you have a champion in your department. The experts, there's a lot of experts here, but the experts for your department is right there. You know your department. You know the strategies to make things work in your department. To tailor a strategy to make a behavioral health program work in your department. Look at policies that would be obstacles. Your medical leave procedure, medication restrictions. Do you know if a member could be on particular medications and be full duty? Antidepressants. Do you know that as union leaders? So when someone calls, you have the answer. And are there negative consequences to having a behavioral health problem? We have to eliminate them. So what should a comprehensive behavioral health program look like? It should be able to identify individuals suffering from PTSD and other behavioral health issues, or when people self-identify. It should pave access to established resources that you've already vetted, you know them. It should offer treatment. It should assure affected individuals do not experience negative work consequences, or else nobody's going to go. And it should restore members back to work as soon as possible. And probably the most important piece is follow-up. That after someone has come back to work, you need to follow up with them and make sure things are going well. Thank you very much.
Okay, I want to thank all the panelists, but now we have, if you have any questions out there, I think it's just as important, not only for this information, we do have a center mic here, and then you can ask any questions to the panelists here that you might have, questions about your department, things that you heard, anything else that you need. I think it's, and please just come up to the center mic if you have those. I think it's real important for us to understand not only the information that was given here today, but how do we apply that out into the field? Yes, the first question.
Yeah, Pat, excellent panel. Thank you all very much for what you're doing, as it relates to PTSD. Joe, I was really taken by your presentation about the pre-disorder, and I couldn't agree with you more about that. We don't get an opportunity to dictate the type of or conditions of an event that we respond to, and you all basically have all said that. But as a company officer, I have the ability, the authority, and I think the responsibility to minimize stress on a 24-hour shift. I think I have that power. As a battalion chief, you have the ability and the authority to minimize stress at a battalion level. I know there's some deputy chiefs in here, they have the same ability. My question is, I guess to you, Pat, and to the General President, is there anything going on, say through the LMI, as it relates to post-traumatic stress in regards to, hey, minimizing prior to the event the amount of stress that exists in a station on a 24-hour basis?
Yeah, well, I'll take a stab at that, Mike. What Mike's talking about, the LMI, and that's the Labor Management Initiative, and that really was set up between fire chiefs and union presidents trying to resolve some issues and bringing in some specialists to really look at those. As far as the LMI, obviously this could be one of the elements, behavioral health could be one of the elements that we can discuss. We have a lot of, I think, potential areas, and this is one area that we could really take a look at and use that as one of the focal points. I think for us, what I do know when we have gone around the country is that this has to be a labor management initiative. And if you're sitting here today and the information that you listen to and you don't have those services, I think the first thing that really has to take place is that, the executive board, you have to sit down and say, where are we on our behavioral health? Can you do a behavioral health audit in your fire department? Can you take a look at where are those gaps that you don't have? Can you then sit down with management and really look at a plan that really is, pro sort of employee, trying to get the employees back on the track, not a discipline plan, and too often that's what we have. We have discipline that is being used for behavioral health issues, and that's not what we want. We do know when firefighters get in trouble, you give them the proper help. In many, many cases, we have firefighter and paramedics that come back to work that are even better than they were when they were hired if you put the services in place. So I think it's real important for us, and I think a labor management initiative, but this is one that I think you have to sit down and you have to develop that. Anybody else on the panel? You're okay? Next question.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks, panel. Tom McKiernan, Philadelphia. Doc, this question is, I guess, for you. The DSM-5 picked up mental health issues and substance abuse this year. Is PTSD going to be covered, I guess, as an occupational disease now, or do you have any input on that?
It is not written in as an occupational illness per se, but there is a lot greater emphasis on the literature reaching out to certain occupations, emergency response being among them. Because most of our knowledge base about post-traumatic stress disorder came from either veterans or rape survivors. And although, so we feel sort of, I think, like the cardiology specialty felt when we only studied men. We feel like there's a hole in our knowledge base for PTSD. So all of this research that departments are fostering is going to let us know more about it being an occupational illness. That said, the change in from 4 to 5, DSM-4 to DSM-5 is an important change that we're still seeing the effects of. I think we have, as more treatments have come along, we've discovered more about how people can recover from the actual PTSD diagnosis. When it was first written about, particularly in veteran samples, it was a once and done. Once you had it, it would be chronic and lifelong. And we know that that's not true for everybody because we now have treatment that lets people go back to work and lets people recover.
Okay, thank you.
Just introduce yourself and what department you're from. That might help.
Norm Golden, Local 1352 at Washington State. In Washington State, there is no treatment for PTSD. There is, but it's not covered by insurance. If it's mental health, the insurance won't cover it. If it's court-ordered treatment, insurance won't cover it. And so we're sending our firefighters out of state and working through Safe Call Now. A lot of them are going to California, Florida, places like this. What if the IAFF has been awesome leading the way, Pat, like with the health and wellness, you know, in Phoenix there, they said, we're gonna do all these annual physicals, and they started their own medical clinic. We have enough, unfortunately, enough business, just in Washington State, I had 5 people within a 2-week period go down to California at $30,000 each to this one treatment facility. And these people come back and they go, it saved my life, it saved my marriage. It's amazing. The 100% that Kenny was talking about, I can quantify that because I've sat with these people and they're saying it saved me totally. And I met a firefighter from Rhode Island that was at the station fire. I met a firefighter from New York. I'm going, geez, these treatment centers are full of firefighters. There are guys. We have the work. Is this something that the IAFF can take the lead again and start a treatment center? I mean, look at the panel you put together for this. I think we could treat our members, work with the insurance companies. You know, the dual diagnosis in Washington State, they don't think it exists. It's crazy.
Yeah, you know, from the IAFF, and I'll let any of the other panelists talk about this, but we are taking a look at that, and I think that's one of the critical, and I think you heard it here too, about those services not being provided, not being there, and how many of those firefighters have we missed. We have 2 programs that are coming out from the IAFF, and really they're going to be delivered. We have Redmond Symposium coming up, and that's the largest health and safety symposium. That's going to be in August, right outside of DC at National Harbor. We're going to unveil, hopefully, the beginning stages of a new, not only peer program that we're putting out for certification, but a program that we can go in and take a look at what are the services that the fire departments have to offer. Are they including this program and the treatment? And I'll let Frank speak on this because I think this is critically important. Too often when you need to get somebody in treatment, you can't, that window closes very carefully. And if you don't have the money provided, can we build into that contract? Another thing that you talked about, post-traumatic stress disorder, and this is the disorder. We are seeing some states that are putting it in presumption language, that it would be covered, and the cost of care would be covered. And that's something we're going to be pushing too. I know that Connecticut's looking after that, especially after the elementary school shooting out there. So we are taking a look at that. But it is something that the IAFF is going to take a look at. Frank, I don't know, do you?
Yeah, the hard work that our local has done to have us become the gatekeeper for our insurance. So when we have a member that has been diagnosed with PTSD or substance use problem, we make the decision and get them into treatment. So I'm really sorry that you're going through that. The contract that our union has developed with the administration and the city has made us the gatekeeper. So it's just a simple phone call and a pickup that afternoon. So if we've identified somebody with these issues, we literally pick up the phone and within 2 or 3 hours, that person's in treatment. So I'm really sorry that you're not have that. You definitely deserve that. All firefighters deserve that for the work that we do.
I would also say that there are some extraordinary care providers in the state of Washington that are available if as you try to change things legally through the insurance system, but I can certainly make recommendations for people who would have sliding scale fees for if there's somebody who might fall through the cracks. Because there are providers who are aware of insurance gaps and will flex. Not that that's a long-term solution, but in a pinch it'll do.
Thank you.
Mark Davis, Local 145, San Diego City. I got a comment and a question to the General President, or you, Pat, but I'd like to echo the brother to the right here. Labor throughout the lunch. I mean, we're here, we're eating the lunch. Those folks up in management are out to lunch somewhere else. They're disconnected. Joe from Philly, our guys, they're slamming them with discipline. The same guy keeps coming. The guy's a Navy SEAL. I got kill lists on my job. These guys are being released from wherever they're running around over there, whacking people. They're on a plane like Vietnam vets, dropped off back in San Francisco. The guy's just killing someone 2 days before. I got kill list. Some of management is on it. To the General President, San Diego's got a large military, Navy mainly, Marine Corps, and we do, like I said, with these people coming right back to our job, and we have no connection with them. Have we talked to our federal governmental leaders and how we can get connected, this IAFF can get connected so that when they're released back to us, that there's still some sort of a military connection financially, or their peers, because it's going to be hard to I was in the Army, but I fought the Cold War, which is why we're not speaking Russian right now, but I didn't go to combat, but I might be able to talk with them. But a brother or sister coming back from that, especially I got Navy SEALs. These guys are doing it. I got a lot of them because there's a base there right in San Diego. So it's going to be hard for them to maybe, and the panel would understand how for them to connect even in the stations. And they may feel better connected with Navy SEALs or something. So is there a connection going on that we can, weed this in to some of our governmental leaders where we've talked to them, we're taking this program, we're holding it, like the captain from New York says, now we're holding the ball. We don't want to release it. Some of our people don't want to be released. My mind's going, just like Joe, my mind goes a million places, but when I know I got kill lists on my job, I got a problem. And so I'm hoping maybe we can get connected with our military leaders on the federal government level and whatnot with this whole program for our people as well, rather than just having them released right back into the ranks here, because as the chief said too, our folks are going for, you may be done with 2 tours, 3 tours over there, but now you got 25 years left of the job here, and you're going to be seeing this stuff every single day, on and on and on. So thank you, panel, thank you, great job.
Thank you for the question, and the General President is going to have a reply on that.
Well, first of all of you know I'm pretty straightforward and sometimes too candid. The answer to your question, brother, is yes, but unfortunately the result was no. We made an attempt to work out a program. We called it a bridge. Pat joined me, and we met with, in fact, I discussed this with the President of the United States and General Shasinski, who is the director of VA, and about the importance twofold. One, giving our veterans an opportunity to have a path into a great career that would be a relatively natural fit for them. Command, uniform, frontline, crew, all the value to the individual veterans it would be, as well as getting them into a situation where we could also provide them care and behavioral health assistance, give them a job. I got shuffled down to a deputy secretary. Wasn't it a deputy secretary? Yeah. And we're on the air, so I guess I can't.
No, you
well,
are,
yeah, I can. Well, I don't care. And honestly, they gave us, I'll do it, the pink paper shuffle. That's as clean as way. I then went and met with Secretary Hagel on the same subject. I knew Chuck Hagel when he was in the Senate. I'm not trying to do name dropping. Yes, we've been attempting to do this with the administration. The real bottom line is a lot of talk, and at the moment, still no results. So your suggestion and observation is well placed. And your union has more than actively and continues to attempt to address this issue. One, recognizing the incredible work our veterans do, the service they've given, and to give them a place to have a career, but also a place that would be able to recognize individually their situation and provide a level of care to them. And at the moment, we've not been given much results, but that doesn't mean that we'll quit.
Can I just comment real quick? Pat?
Thank you.
Can I
Yes,
comment real
absolutely,
quick?
Joe. Yeah.
We got a similar problem, and I'm just like you. I was in the Air Force, but I can't talk intelligently to somebody and kind of have empathy or understand what he went through in combat. So I'm not going to put myself in that position because I can't do it. So what we're trying to do to put together is create a support group within the within Local 22. So kind of even if you set these guys up that become firefighters, so Navy SEAL comes back, becomes a firefighter, his experiences from them forward become different. I'm not saying he's forgetting about his Navy SEAL stuff, but if he's just hooked up with the VA guys, like that's what it's addressing. It's addressing, Afghanistan or Iraq. And what we're trying to do is we're getting this up and running, is get our Vietnam vets, our older guys that are involved, that have a lot of respect throughout the department because they've been through it too, very similar situation, and get them involved. And it's not easy to do, and we've been struggling trying to get this off the ground, to be quite honest with you. But if we can get it off the ground where you have numbers to call, you can get a group together to meet and discuss if they want to, but at least have a number to call where a firefighter who's a veteran, who's been in combat, you can call this guy and he knows what you went through, because like you said, I don't and you don't because I didn't do it,
Mr. President, I appreciate your, I knew you'd be on the forefront, and you already have gone at our government officials, but since we're live, I'm going to take the opportunity to tell those folks, if they ever get to see this, our political leaders that we vote for, you need to get on the ball here. These people, you're sending them to combat for our interests in this country, and then they're going to come back and serve the communities. It's time to step up because we still vote, and I can tell you the IAFF members here vote. So if you're going to be with us, I think this is part of being with us.
Thank you. Next question.
Good morning, Bridget Keating, Local 1403, Metro Dade Firefighters. Understanding that the PTSD, this is very multifaceted and multidimensional, and I thank all the panels for the information that we've been given. With that, substance abuse, I know we're looking for setting up programs and rehab programs for people with substance abuse because a lot of that is what contributes to the PTSD. And they've looked into rehab centers that address members who are going through substance abuse due to workers' comp issues, meaning they have an injury, they're running through the system, it's been delayed, now they're taking the medicines, and now they're now addicted to those drugs. We've tried to address it. In Miami, there is none, and there's no really desire for that to happen. Is the IAFF looking at anything for addressing that issue specifically? Because here's it's a legal drug. This is something that they're going through, and now we can't even get them help because there's not that help out there.
I'm going to let some of the panelists go. I think they have some real experience on this, but that's what we are seeing. We are seeing an increase in prescription drug use, and then we're seeing an addiction part of that, and then how do you treat that, and how do you get that part of the job classification you're talking about. Anybody here on the panel like to address that?
It's a national epidemic, and we're not exempt. And when I started doing this work, we would see 1 or 2 out of maybe 20 that are addicted to prescription meds. Now it's 10 times that. Almost every other person that has a substance abuse problem seems to be, part of it is prescription meds. And random testing policies which are in place around the country, the prescription meds, really, you have a golden ticket when you have a prescription. So you test positive, you're taking the medication, you have a prescription, and you get a pass, and now you're going down that road. So it is a major issue. It's very difficult. We've had repeat offenders with alcohol. We have a lot more success than we have with the prescription meds that are out there. it is something that needs to be addressed nationwide and in the fire departments.
And also, and how we can protect our members in the contract with providing these assistance, because a lot of these are tied to workers' comp issues. And our processes are getting delayed, and at least in Florida, everything's denied. You know, they throw the book at you, and then they hope that you fight it. And with the workers' comp laws there, they got everything working against us. So the members some are doing prescription drugs, which are non-job issue injuries or illnesses, and then others they're physically getting injured and they're getting delayed getting back to service, which it's a benefit for them and for the department to get them back to service, but they're not providing any avenue to help them. Maybe we can help provide that in the contracts as well.
This is an issue that's addressed partially in the new behavioral health chapter, particularly the progression from pain medication to treat a job-related injury into addiction, and then how you manage that. So there, as Frank said, there's a lot of awareness, and behavioral health is trying to craft some language around it.
Yeah, and what Suzy's talking about is the WFI, Wellness Fitness Initiative. We just did our final meeting, and we had it in New York City, and we're coming out with the 4th edition. With that, what we have put in place in the behavioral health section in there, we've identified what are some of the new addictions, what do we need to do, how do we need to address them. It also increases, what we did was the annual medicals, the time at annual medicals where a physician can actually talk to a firefighter or a paramedic in there and talk about the issues, and maybe they can identify something, even during your annual medical, that can expedite maybe some help in that. But Bridget, an excellent question, thank you.
Just to close on it, is not only once you identify that they have the problem, is finding those rehab centers that are willing to work with them. They're not out there. And it's a growing epidemic, at least I know in South Florida.
Right. Thank you. We have time for one more question. Go ahead.
Chad Swayze from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, local 867. I want to thank the panel, thank General President and yourself, Pat, for a great discussion. I did like the panels when they brought up about dropping the disorder portion. It's post-traumatic stress, and we deal with it before it gets to the level where you push that person over the edge and they go over the cliff. I've been dealing with my own personal stress.
Can you just get to the microphone?
Sure.
Yeah.
I've been dealing with my own PTSD issues since an incident for the past 3 years. One of the things I've been looking into is treatment for it. I've gone through a couple different levels, and maybe Dr. Gulliver can touch on this. One of the things that I've looked up is it's called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Dr. Shapiro's been great on that. It's an 8-step process where it helps people deal with, and it's one more tool for us to be able to deal with it. Maybe you can touch on that.
Sure. EMDR, which involves eye movements as well as processing of material, is currently suggested as an evidence-based practice. Among the evidence-based practices has the weakest level of support, but it still is in the toolbox as one of the things. And for people for whom it works fast, and they love it. And it's not easy. None of these treatments are easy. The question and the cautionary note is we can't tell who it's going to work for. And I hate to give a medicine if I don't know it's going to work. But that's part of the problem with treating PTSD is we're not ever sure. I can't say this will work for you and this will work differently for you. The science isn't there yet. So EMDR is one of the suggested practices, but if somebody tries it and it doesn't work for them, there are other things that might, so don't give up.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I'd like to bring the General President back up. He'd like to address not only the group here, but address the group that took the time in watching us from across North America.
Well, I just want to close us out, and first of all, I want to thank the panel. Incredible presentation, informative, riveting, certainly bringing forward an issue that this IAFF is committed to. We're spending more and more resources to develop our internal programs, to help our affiliates understand how to not only identify but implement the programs that we believe will be helpful, and to provide a direction on how to get service and help. To the question, I don't know if it was Mike, whoever raised the question about LMI. Was that you, Mike? I'm going to be meeting this April. Ken Block, Chief in Edmonton, who is the incoming president of Metro Chiefs. We have a terrific relationship. We've set up a joint meeting. Quite frankly, there has been a period of time where our collaboration was not as effective as it had been for many years when we developed LMI, when we developed the CPAT, when we developed EMS-based, fire-based EMS, 1710. We've had a period of time where we have not had quite the ability to have a productive relationship. I believe that we're going to stand that up again. I make a commitment that I'll bring this issue as an issue for an LMI effort. And I just want to say to all of us here in Anaheim, all of my sisters and brothers, our leaders here, and what I'm told by our E18 production, by the way, this is brought to you by E18 Production and our studios, which you, the leaders, the members of the IAFF own, your own production company, and I'm told that we had over 500 leaders live streaming in. So clearly, as a first attempt, we're expanding our reach and our ability to bring information and instruction across our entire international. Again, thank the panel, my three brothers, Doctor, incredible job. Pat, Jim, and our health and safety staff is nothing but the very, very best. Behavioral health is a critical component of health and safety of this IAFF. I know you have other workshops to go. Everybody out there, stay safe, and we'll be back to you.